I also felt bad towards my partners because I felt like I wasn't able to fulfill them in a sense, but I would kind of like still tolerate the pain and not like tell them to stop. But it was definitely a blow because I didn't know that I had this condition and it would be something that would hinder me. So what I have is called like vaginismus. So it's when anything kind of want to penetrate the vaginal opening, it kind of like tightens up instinctively and it can hurt quite a bit.
How do you find out that you had vaginismus?
Wow, it kind of like started when I first started being physically intimate with people. So the guy at that time, he tried to finger me and then his finger cannot go in. It also hurt a lot for me. So then he told me like, maybe you can go home and practice fingering yourself in front of the mirror and then use lube. So then you can have a better understanding of your anatomy.
And how was it?
It was like a bit better, but at the same time, it still hurt a lot, especially when like bigger things try to enter. So what I realized was like doing like kind of like DIY dilation where I slowly progress to bigger things. That's pretty much what they do as well at the hospital and all. So they do dilation therapy where they increase the dilators size by size.
So when you first found out, how do you feel about it? Were you confused?
I definitely was quite confused. I think at that time I felt very bad because the person I was physically intimate with, he was saying like, oh, if you cannot be penetrated by anything, then we cannot really do anything at all. I was so new and more naive, so I felt pretty bad and like inadequate.
So when you first learned about this condition, do you tell anybody about it or do you just like keep it to yourself?
When I first found out, I was actually quite happy. And I told like my friends and two people, I was like, oh my god, like it's actually a legitimate condition, and I just felt like very seen, especially about like the pain I've been through. Like, you know, it's not some rare thing that only I have. There is a medical term for it.
With this condition, because like it's not really heavily talked about, right? When you share it with other people, have you ever received any like unsolicited advice or insensitive comments?
Yeah, mostly by men actually. So they'll tell me like, oh, it's probably because the guy didn't lubricate you enough, or he didn't do like proper foreplay, or like didn't get you wet enough, that's why it hurts, and you just need to find the right partner.
Why do you think people will make this kind of like insensitive comments? I mean, clearly it's a medical issue, I mean, from the name itself.
For a variety of reasons, I think, like the lack of sex education, sexual stigma, but I think also a lot of it is misogyny, thinking that it's somehow okay to harass a woman or mansplain to a woman.
How do you think such assumption or such societal norms can be changed?
What worked for me was, you know, surrounding myself with friends who are more sex positive. But I think a lot has to do with the mindset. I think locally, society itself kind of sees like penis in vagina sex, so PIV sex, as like synonymous with sex itself, which doesn't necessarily have to be the case actually, because there are so many other ways that you can gain sexual gratification and pleasure. Even just cuddling with your partner, you know, that is in itself, you know, a form of creating intimacy that doesn't necessarily have to use sexual means as a vehicle.
Do you think there's this expectation when dating in Singapore that penetrative sex is a must-have in a relationship?
I feel like when the relationship is serious enough and they're like in a committed relationship for quite a while, then I feel the expectation is that they should have done it. Society itself kind of like sees that, you know, if you have a committed partner, especially you're married, and you don't like consummate the marriage, I feel it's a bit weird and kind of like out of social norms to do so. So I feel like we have to kind of like widen our vocabulary in terms of what sex means and like what is actually something that is more gratifying to us, be it sexually or not, rather than, you know, thinking like, oh okay, penetrative sex is the end goal and it's like the best way to gain sexual pleasure.
To the people who want to see a doctor but they're scared or they just don't want to admit that they have vaginismus, what will you tell these women?
there's this kind of misconception where it's like, oh, you have this vaginismus problem, you should definitely go and fix it. And I feel like it doesn't necessarily have to be the case, because like, what is your intention for wanting to fix it? So that you are seen as sexually viable, so that you can definitely have sexual gratification through PIV sex. I mean, definitely nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't see a doctor. Definitely see a doctor if it's important to you, especially like if you want to have biological children, or you want to definitely want to engage in like painless PIV sex and things like that. I understand that society and the mindset and everything is definitely a very big pressure. You have to kind of like not do it for other people validation, but also kind of look into yourself and see like, what are my mindset and intentions. I think take it at your own pace, whatever you're comfortable with.